Hopefully it. All right. Hey, we're live again. To anyone who has come back in, some technical difficulties there with Google Hangouts. Although, hopefully, that first segment of the show actually archived to YouTube. I'll be kind of mad if it didn't, but hopefully it did. And then to those of you listening via audio, you'll never even hear this part. So, ha.
You guys.
We talked about, we were talking about a lot of stuff. We started off talking about Star Wars. We talked about Counter Spy. We talked about Smash Bros. Wii U. And we were actually talking a little bit about, which wasn't even planned to talk about, but we got into talking about how good trophy and achievement design has actually become like this subset of game design. And there's sort of this love-hate relationship depending on how those lists are constructed. Which all came out of me joking that Nintendo still has yet to implement any system like that. But
something I have to give Sony credit for is you can actually essentially turn off their trophies. You can have it to where they games you play, the trophy lists don't show up publicly. You can have it to where they don't show up for yourself, so that you can effectively block them out if you don't want them. So I like the flexibility that they give you there actually for that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, certainly. So speaking of trophies, one thing that they have driven, they play into that, like, I think slight like OCD tendency that a lot of gamers have anyway, which is, man, I gotta finish it. I gotta do everything in this game. I am someone who really, if it's a game that I like even a little bit, then man, I'm suddenly like, oh, how can I do everything in this game? I want to like really beat it and be a completionist. Part of that too, I think, comes out of like when we were growing up as kids, back in the NES day, you might have only gotten like a few games a year, right? Yeah. So you were all about like, I got to do every level in this game. I got to learn how to speed run it. I got to learn how to do it without dying, like Nick was talking about last week with Contra.
Yeah.
We grew up in that, like, and now it's like, crap, you don't have time to 100% every game. There's too much to play.
I know, right? And also, those old games, it was almost an achievement just to be able to beat a game.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly true. I mean, there were several of those older games that were just so difficult that it might take you a year before you finally got that run where, without save points and all the stuff that we have nowadays, that you actually beat it. That's certainly true. So speaking of the whole like platinuming games thing, I've talked about Far Cry 4 on the show a few times over the last month or so.
Probably and about Smash.
yeah, almost as much as you have about Smash. That's true. And I've been working on and off on this game since Christmas. I really started playing it, I guess, in earnest somewhere around March, I want to say. And this will be the last show that I talk about it on, pretty much, because I finally got the platinum in Far Cry 4. And this game has this weird like bell curve to it, right? So it starts out really slow and it's kind of boring and kind of like starts out with like, should I go and like do some hunting and like some of these different side quests and whatnot? And then you start getting into more and more of the story missions, and there's some really fun, unique missions, some fun story pieces. But that stuff ends really fast. Like if you were to just speed through the campaign of Far Cry 4, you could probably do it in a few hours. Like it is not a long game, especially because some of the side quest campaign missions like aren't required. Like you don't have to finish all the Yogi and Reggie missions. You don't have to finish all the Shangri-La or Herc missions to beat the campaign. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to finish all those to platinum the game, which is freaking insanely weird. But yet you have to set 50 dudes on fire with your flamethrower. So there's like these weird things. And then so when I talk about a bell curve, so there's all that cool stuff in the middle. And then at the end, when you're going for like trophy cleanup to get the platinum, then you just start doing dumb stuff. So it would have been, talking about like good trophy design, it would have been much better for them to say, oh, there's a gold trophy for finishing all the Shangri-La missions or all of the Herc missions or all the Longinus missions. Nope, you don't even have to do that stuff. There are trophies for setting 50 dudes on fire. There's trophies for jumping out of a helicopter into a truck and killing someone, and like all these weird little things like that. And there are also a couple of multiplayer trophies and online trophies, which is not great. But so it kind of got, and where it got really boring at the end was the very last trophy that I had to get, which was to level up all of my skills and max out all of my skills in the skill tree. Mainly because there are 3 skills in the game that you can actually put 10 points into and learn the same skill 10 times to increase. It's for the syringes that you inject yourself with to get like special bonuses, like being able to breathe underwater longer. You can actually like level that up 10 times to make it last 10 times longer. So I just ended up resetting all of the outposts in the game and just going through and clearing some of them like multiple times to get experience points to spend on those skill points. Instead of, what would have been great is going through and playing the rest of those side missions that I never got around to doing. But I was like, well, those aren't going to net me anything towards quote unquote 100%ing, so I didn't do them. So slow game at the front, really good, like short single player campaign, and then a lot of bullshit at the end to do cleanup. I did get one really cool story out of it, though. So one of the last trophies that I got was you learn how to do a vehicle takedown as one of the skills that you can learn in the skill tree. Strangely enough, you really don't use this skill unless you're playing co-op, which means you have to be in the passenger seat of a truck or a vehicle and have someone drive you up to the driver's side of an enemy vehicle and then like lean out the window, and you can do this takedown skill where you jump in onto the enemy vehicle, stab the guy, throw him off, and you take over his vehicle. Which sounds really awesome, right? Like to be able to do that in a video game, that sounds pretty cool, pretty fun. So why did I not get to do that in the main game anywhere? Like, why was that not a thing? Instead, I had to wait until like the very end of the game when I'm doing trophy cleanup, and it's like, oh, hey, that skill you learned like 20 hours ago, why don't you go try that out? So in order to do this, obviously I had to be in co-op, and I just kept like searching for a co-op partner. You can't do it as the host because you have to do it as the Herc character and not the main character, AJ. So you have to actually join someone else's co-op game who's already hosting one. So you can't just like start a game up and be like, all right, I'm going to get this trophy now. No. I spent like 2 hours just constantly searching for a game to join until finally someone was online playing and I could join their co-op game. And then I start talking to this guy. He's speaking French. He lives in Montreal. He's Canadian. And then he like finally like he switches to English a little bit. My French isn't very good. In fact, I know what I learned from like some podcasts to go to Paris last year, and that's about it. Despite my last name being very French. And so this guy is like, oh, sorry if my English isn't that great. I just watch American movies as like the only English I really learn. His English was like amazing, of course. It was great. So I started talking to this guy, like learning about his family, and he like works at Costco and like learning about what he does. Really cool, really nice guy. And we just had this awesome experience because he's just like driving me around in his truck, and we're just like looking for an enemy for me to like leap out the window and attack off of their vehicle. And so like the enemies, they just pop up like kind of randomly on the road. They're not that easy to find. So we're just like, it's just like driving down the road in real life. Like you're just sitting in the passenger seat, kicked back, having a conversation with this guy while he's driving you around. It's kind of like hitchhiking. And then finally there's an enemy on an ATV, and we like drive up beside of him. And so there's like our truck going alongside, there's this ATV, and we like match his speed. And I lean out the window, like kind of look out the window with my joystick, and I get the QTE prompt to do the takedown. I push it, jump out the window, like stab this guy, throw him off the ATV. Suddenly I'm driving the ATV, and I'm like, oh, it worked. It was good. And like the guy that I was playing with, he hadn't even like taken his like stick and like used his view to like turn around and look at the passenger seat. He had no idea I jumped out the window. He was like, did we do it? Did we do it? I'm like, yeah, I'm not in the car anymore. Like I'm behind you on this ATV. And he's like, oh, this is so cool. We were both so excited. And I was like, hey, thanks, man. And then I just like logged out, ejected the disc. I'm never playing the game again. So, but it was just like a cool, a very awesome, neat one of those moments that just makes you think gaming is so cool and makes you like really love to be a gamer, because it was just cool to meet that guy and have that experience. So,
Awesome.
so another experience I had on PS4 this week was with Drive Club. The PS Plus edition finally came out this week, man. Did you play it?
Yeah, I did play it. Actually, I'm surprised it doesn't seem like they put 2 years more stuff in it than than what would have been there 2 years ago. I
Yeah,
don't know what took so
yeah.
long.
So this is a tough one for me because um, I don't really like racing games anyway. Like I've never been a fan of like Forza.
I like racing games, so we might
You
have a different opinion on this
Yeah,
one.
so you're a racing game guy, so I want to hear your opinion on this definitely, because me, I was just kind of trying it out of curiosity. Like, what is this game that has taken forever for Sony to get out the door? Um, and so I was like, I'm probably not going to enjoy this a ton, but I feel like I got to play it. It's free. Why not? I've never been a fan of Forza or Gran Turismo. Probably the closest I've come to enjoying racing games is like the old Cruising USA, Cruising the World, like more of an arcade racer than a simulator. And even now to go back and play a game like that, I probably wouldn't want to. Kart racer is also not really my thing. I mean, even in Mario
Wow.
Kart, like battle mode was always my favorite mode. Um, but I tried this. First impression was it throws you into that initial race, and I was like immediately turned off. Like this is like every other racing game I've ever played. It's really really pretty, but every time I come up to a curve, I'm just randomly crashing, and like the car's not going where I'm turning it. I'm like trying to accelerate and pull out, and the car's going sideways, even though I'm not pushing left, I'm going left. And there are like all these like weird mechanics to racing games that I just don't think I will ever have fun with, ever like. I came in dead last place in that opening initial race. I was a little pissed off and kind of like ready to put it down, but I went ahead and like started looking through the menus. I'm like, okay, what else is there to do here? First impressions, Drive Club PS Plus edition is super super watered down. There are all these screens on the menu that are like coming soon or go to the PlayStation store to buy the full version of the game and unlock this. And I get that it's a demo, but they didn't really market it as a demo. They kind of marketed it as like something special for PS Plus members. There is that like initial like tour of probably a dozen races you can do, although you have to meet certain criteria and unlock stars to get to some of them. But at the end of the day, I felt like it was just it was just like I thought that there would be a little more to it. Even like just stepping back and objectively looking at it and saying, okay, I don't like racing games. I'm not having fun with this game. But just looking at what's available to PS Plus users there, I feel like they kind of did a little bit of a disservice, and it's just like one big ad for the main game.
Yeah, I pretty, in terms of the presentation of the game to PS Plus users, I pretty much completely agree with you. It comes with all the same basic functionality as the full version. The difference is you have a limited number of cars and a limited number of tracks you can play on. Basically, I think only all the tracks in India. And it for a demo, it's actually a decent bit of content for a demo. But the thing is after 2 years of waiting for this game, and initially we were told that PS Plus users are going to get a smaller version of the game, but one that essentially wouldn't be, in my opinion, like a demo. And so that kind of bothered me a bit. I mean, I would have liked it a lot better if they only had the PS Plus stuff in the menu, so you didn't see all of that other stuff in the non-PS Plus version. Maybe like have just a single menu you can go to that says like, if you upgrade, you can get all this stuff, because it really kind of breaks the experience when you're just scrolling over car after car, track after track of things you just can't get unless you go to the PlayStation Store. So I found that very, very annoying. And In terms of what I thought about the game itself, though, first off, like you said, very, very pretty game. I think the environments are done very well. I like the weather effects. And in terms of the mechanics, I wouldn't say this is like Gran Turismo. It certainly doesn't feel like a simulation that much. But I also wouldn't say it's an arcade racer. It's almost something in between. The way, at least whenever I was playing it, the controls felt like something in between, but leaning more towards a simulation. So basically, if you're not into the those types of controls, then you're not going to like the game, because you have to, even though you're using a joystick and you want to press right to turn, you got to think about pressing right is just, you know, spinning the wheel around. And so you have to think about how the your speed factor into it, and like whether it's a rear-wheel drive car, et cetera, things like that. So those are things that you will have to take into account. So I can understand why, if you don't like simulation racing games, then you wouldn't like that, because but especially if you prefer arcade games, it certainly does not have arcade style controls where right does mean right in every instance.
Yeah, I think that I would actually be better at driving a sports car at 150 miles per hour in real life. Because what I always do a really bad job of with the more sim style racing games is that you don't have that feedback, right?
Right.
You don't have the feeling of the car giving. You don't feel the vibration of your braking. You don't feel the car hydroplaning, which I felt like all the tracks in Drive Club were wet for some reason. Like it was raining or like wet on almost all of them.
You could actually change that setting in there.
Yeah, and it looked beautiful. It looked great, but it was like I was just constantly hydroplaning and like sliding all over the road a little bit. And I think without that, like maybe with a racing wheel or something that gave me like a little bit more feedback, I would be better at those games. But without that, and just trying to imagine what the right amount of turn and gas and brake is going to be on some of those curves, I am just horrible at it.
Well, another thing is I think it's almost like a mental thing as well. Like they're in a racing simulator type game, you know, cars will react much more similarly to different environments and different conditions than you would expect in the kind of game that you're playing a little with a joystick. So when I'm holding a joystick, I'm thinking, okay, right means right. If I'm in a car, I think, okay, what are all these things I have to take into consideration? And it's taken me a bit of time to actually break that mental bridge, so to speak. But I will say it's fairly fun. It's not my favorite kind of racing game. I also prefer arcade racing games myself. But actually, the issue I have is I think I'm spoiled by open world racing games like Need for Speed Most Wanted, or Midnight Club series, which I know was very popular on the Xbox, where you're not actually on a set track, but you can roam around everywhere, and you kind of have to just know the best way to get from point A to point B while hitting all the checkpoints. And so if this were that type of racing game, I'd probably be a lot more into it. But I think objectively, it's not a bad game. It's actually a pretty good game as long as you get the full version.
Yeah, and you know, this is gonna sound weird, but I think I actually would enjoy a game where it was like an open world cross country racing trip, and there were like no, it was not actually racing. It was just car driving. Maybe it would get boring after a while, but these games are always really pretty. And I think it would just be cool to be able to like drive around cities that you know, and like countrysides, and like see some of these great settings, and almost like a maybe like a vacation road trip simulator game. I kind of feel like I'd be into that, actually.
Yeah, that's I mean, actually, I've played Need for Speed Most Wanted in that way. I would just go online with my brother, and we would just kind of drive around and not really do races half the time. We would just kind of explore around the city, which was
Yeah.
pretty fun.
Speaking of cities, I did a little retro gaming this week on the PC on GOG, and got back into SimCity 2000,
Wow.
which is that's old school. I can probably sum that one up pretty quickly in saying that sim games don't hold up over time when you've played stuff like, I don't know, like Civilization or some of the more recent, even like just core Sim series games. Even like the Sim Tower game that I really loved and played on PC in like the mid '90s was way more advanced than Sim City 2000 was, because it's still like that pixelated look. The UI is still very much driven by like the limitations of being one of those old MS-DOS games. I think this game was like 93, 94-ish era. Um, I spent a couple hours with it. It was fun, but at the end of the day, I was not drawn in by any means to complete that or to keep playing. So if you're thinking about getting into sim games and like city building games or uh, any of those like Roller Coaster Tycoon, I would recommend probably just going with whatever the latest version actually is.
Hmm. I wouldn't go with the latest version of SimCity, though. I think wasn't that the one that had all of the online server issues? You can't play it offline at all.
Yeah, you're right on that one. So I
Get
don't know. I think that was an EA thing. I'm sure that
yeah.
was a few years ago. I'm sure it's probably cleaned up by now. But yeah, that game had a horrendous launch. Kind of like some other games that we'll talk about in a little bit. So you were pretty excited about one of Nintendo's pre-E3 announcements involving Earthbound. Did you get a chance to dive into that?
Actually, no. I'm plan on downloading it. It's Earthbound Beginnings. That's what it's called in the U.S. Never released here before. It was called Mother in Japan. But I noticed on my menu, on my virtual console menu, that I actually had the one that was released in the U.S., Earthbound, which was Mother 2 in Japan. And so I decided before I buy Earthbound Beginnings, I'm just going to play through Earthbound again, because I've only beaten it once. That was a long time ago, and it was probably one of my favorite RPGs. It has a lot of very unique mechanics, gameplay mechanics that I haven't seen in any other game. First off, it is turn-based, like classic JRPGs are, but the difference is that instead of a life bar or life meter, your HP is shown on like one of those little rotatey, almost like a roulette kind of thing. And when you take damage, that starts to lower. So if you have 95 HP left and an enemy attacks you, like Master Belch, for example, or New Age Retro Hippie, which those are actual enemies in the game, by the way. um, those retro hippies, right? The New Age ones. Instead of just dying right off, that will just scroll down to 0, which means you can actually, if you can destroy the opponent or the enemy before your life runs out, you actually can be successful in that battle. And another interesting mechanic is they took out a lot of the grind that typically came with those RPGs, particularly when you fight in where you're a much higher level than the enemies, because typically what happens is you'll start the game and the enemies are hard. And when you come to levels higher than everything else, you still have to go through the whole battle. But in this game, when you run into the enemy, instead of taking you to the battle screen, it just automatically kills the enemies and you get the experience without ever having to change screens or go to another menu. So that's a really cool gameplay mechanic. And in terms of story, it seems like it is what those in Japan thought America was like in the 1990s. And it's just very interesting. And the writing in the game is very hilarious. I would actually recommend it for anybody to download. There are actually 2 ways you can play it. You can download it for $10, I think it is, or you can buy an original copy of the cartridge. Those, I think, run around $300 now if you can find one. So, yes. Once this is finished, though, I will definitely be downloading the original that I have yet to play. So.
I think the last time I played through Earthbound was emulated on a ROM in college. Or I mean, unofficially. I mean, somebody did that. Might not have been me.
Well, I mean, even if it were, you might have had a copy of the cartridge, right? And then it could be arguably a legal backup. But let's not get into that.
Exactly. So one last game I want to touch on this week is Marvel Heroes. I mentioned it a couple times on the show that I was playing it. I think maybe even on episode 0 or episode 1, some of our inaugural episodes, we had talked about Marvel Heroes a little bit, and I had just gotten to the point where I had kind of unlocked Captain America as my uncapped level 10 plus character.
The cap.
Uncap the cap, man. And so I finished going through all of the story missions in Marvel Heroes this weekend, and that game, I'm not going to go back to it. Like, I experimented for about 30 minutes after beating it with some other characters. I played around with Rocket Raccoon, who I had touched previously. I played around with Gambit and also with Nightcrawler. Just some of my favorite other characters from the Marvel universe there. And the move sets are definitely unique and fun, but I just can't see myself like wanting to play the actual core mechanics of the game anymore. Like the fun part of the game for me at this point would be just seeing what the other characters can do, because they are also unique. But the story was actually a good, well-written Marvel story. It was fun. It was entertaining. But the game itself is it's not very good. I mean, it's a very deep RPG. There's a lot of crafting, a lot of different things in terms of items that you can like slot in different ways, a lot of like spending skill points and things like that. All the things I love in an RPG, like Diablo type game. But the game makes you start out on the normal difficulty, which should just be called like baby easy. I did not die one time in the entire game from start to finish. Not even one time. I didn't even really get that low a health with my playthrough with Captain America on the normal difficulty, and you can't even bump up the difficulty to hard until you complete a run on normal, which isn't terribly uncommon, I guess. But I don't see myself like spending the hours to go back through and play it on hard. I just wish it had been like a little more challenging and a little more deep. I wish they'd taken all the deep, like really robust systems they built around the crafting and some of the other RPG elements and applied just a little bit of that flavor to the actual combat and gameplay mechanics, because that was not at all deep. And it was just kind of like, I was just a damaged sponge. I would just keep spamming the same like special moves over and over again after they cooled down. And I only got to level 29 by the time I beat the game. And I had no trouble defeating the final boss at level 29. You don't start unlocking some of the really cool like team up abilities and really awesome like hero powers until like much later. I mean, there's gear you can't even wear until level 60. So all the really cool stuff is gated behind level requirements that you never even reach in the game just doing one playthrough. Doctor Doom and Loki, I don't think it's like really spoilers to say who the final bosses are, because if you've ever seen anything in the Marvel universe, like Doctor Doom and Loki are going to be bad guys. But they were the two like final bosses, and they were the only two bosses or enemies anywhere in the entire game that even like got my health meter dipped below halfway. And I still really didn't have any trouble beating them. I beat Doom solo completely by myself. I beat Loki with one other guy in my party. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I think if you're a big Marvel fan like I am, it's a free-to-play game, very much worth playing through it once just to experience the story, just to see like all the characters and to get to like hang out with some of your favorite Marvel characters. But at the end of the day, it's not that great of a game. I'm glad I didn't spend like $60 on it. It really makes me so badly want another game like Ultimate Alliance or the old X-Men Legends games, where I can actually be more than one character throughout the course of the gameplay and like experiment and try different things. It makes me want that a whole lot. So I don't know. That game's kind of like a C, but it's free to play. So if you love Marvel, go for it. So I think we're gonna skip off on our usual topic of the week slash things that we're excited about. But I do want to preview that at some point on the show we're gonna be talking to each other about our top 10 games of all time. And so this is an idea that I'm interested to hear. I think we'll have some similar games on the list, but I think we'll have some very different opinions, especially when it comes to number one. And hopefully Nick and some folks can join us for that. But that's going to be coming up in future episodes. I just wanted to preview that. We'll be talking about our top 10 games of all time and getting into a little debate there. But for now, I think it's time that we call in the news motorcycle. So it's been a pretty slow news week overall because we're in that like week after E3 kind of period where everything's been kind of announced and we're hearing a few little things trickle in here and there, a few little clarifying things from some post E3 interviews, but for the most part, not a ton of news. One of the news items this week though revolves around like more of a social political news event that's been happening. And we had the really unfortunate, sad situation in South Carolina and Charleston with another shooting down there, and some people lost their lives in a very sad situation. Our hearts go out to those families. But this has caused obviously some controversy around the Confederate flag, given that the shooter was kind of one of those, obviously some mental illness and things like that anytime something like this happens, but also just seems like he was flat out a racist. And he used that Confederate flag imagery, right, a lot. And so, obviously it's a historical thing in some contexts, but in other contexts it's been misappropriated by folks who use it the wrong way, right, to propagate hate. So Apple kind of jumped on the bandwagon with some other retailers this week who are kind of striking the Confederate flag from different storefronts and things like that. But Apple said, "Oh, we're just going to take every game with the Confederate flag in it out of the App Store." As you might imagine, that includes a lot of Civil War games that were accurately portraying that flag and just showing like, oh, this here's a Confederate army in a Civil War historical setting. And Apple just like blanket kind of removed all those games from the App Store. Did you see this news and what was your reaction to it?
Yeah, I saw this news. Like, well, first off, there have been lots of organizations removing the Confederate flag from being for sale and things like that, or things that show that imagery, which in my opinion, that makes sense. For example, reducing the ability for those who want to propagate hate from being able to use a symbol that at least extent, kind of symbolizes a certain level of negative thinking related to our countries and our country's past. And so that makes sense. The problem is with the way Apple did it, they just, like you mentioned, they removed everything that had the Confederate flag in it. And like, for example, if it's an app where, for example, you're something that may be mean-spirited or promote hate in some way and using that symbolism, that is a valid thing to remove, definitely. But say you're it's a game or even some other type of media where they're accurately portraying something historically, if it's the Civil War and you're playing as the Union Army and the army you're going against, which is the Confederate Army, doesn't have that flag, that doesn't make sense. You can't change what history was, so you should actually accurately portray it. Now, if it's a game that, for its purposes, you're playing only as a Confederate army to beat down the Union Army for the purpose of spreading certain types of ideals that we don't stand for as a country and as people, then that makes sense. But just the blanket removal of everything probably was not the best way of going about promoting those types of goals. In my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, I think that's the thing. It felt a little like, Amazon and Walmart like kind of kicked the Confederate flag to the curb, and good on them for whatever they want to do there. They certainly have that right, and that's a product thing that those companies are making a choice about, not an art thing. I would just about guarantee you that Amazon didn't stop selling DVD copies of the movie Gettysburg or stop selling Civil War history books that had the Confederate flag in them, right? They stopped selling products that had that symbol on them.
Right.
Not art. They didn't stop selling art that had, and so for Apple to just like blanket like push art and target gaming specifically, I use the example of the movie Gettysburg, and that was an example from Game Labs, the developers of Ultimate General Gettysburg, which was one of the games that was removed. Maxim Zasov from Game Labs, he said, "Hey, look, Apple, you didn't take Gettysburg out of the iTunes store. Why do you see gaming as a different type of art from film?" And I think he's got a pretty legitimate viewpoint there. You can't take one thing that's about history just because it's a different type of media and target it in a different way. So there was some initial backlash there, and slowly Ultimate General and some of these other games have started finding their way back into the App Store. But I think Steam had the last word. It was kind of funny. They trolled Apple a little bit, and they actually featured that game on their digital storefront in the midst of all this. So that was kind of funny. But it sounds like Apple has seen the error of its ways and has started like filtering these things back in. I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to like kick everything out until they had a chance to review everything on a case by case basis. But it still seemed a little. Yeah, it just still seemed a little unfair for them to target games versus none of the other media that they sell. So moving on, Arkham Knight came out. I haven't played that game yet. I'm kind of holding off on that one a little bit, even though I'm a big fan of the Arkham series. But they actually had to suspend both digital and physical sales of that game on PC because there were so many people having issues, and the game was just completely unplayable for them. And Warner Brothers pulled this thing where, like, at the very last minute, they actually upgraded what they said your minimum PC requirements need to be to run the game. I don't know. It's kind of, I mean, this isn't like new news per se in terms of we see so many games like come out broken down, have issues immediately. It's just like there's almost nothing that I get on release day anymore because of this issue. It seems to be working okay on consoles with the exception of some of the leaderboards on PS4 was broken, but a lot of really angry people online this week who wanted to play that game on PC.
Yeah, I don't buy a lot of games, at launch either. Particularly, I will do it from two companies, Blizzard and Nintendo. That's about it, because they actually
that's a good list.
Tested. Yes. But yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, you're right. These issues tend to be happening a lot lately. Like, I don't know if this is as bad as some of the other recent things that happened. Like, for example, with the most recent Assassin's Creed game that came out. But it's just demonstrates that, it seems that it's more important for these companies to rush a game out to meet a certain deadline or something than to, delay a game just to make sure everything is fixed. And sure, I know gamers and a lot of people, they get upset when a game is delayed, but in the long run, I think it hurts your business more if you're just pushing out broken product one after another.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, you've been drinking any Red Bull lately?
Oh my gosh, no, I have not, and I never will. But that, oh, for those of you who don't know, this is about Destiny. How is Red Bull related to Destiny? What? That makes no sense. Well, Bungie, in all of its, DLC loving glory, decided a new way to make you buy stuff in order to play a little bit of extra content that they've hidden behind some kind of paywall in some way. And this is by buying Red Bull. Yes, there is a new quest that is unlockable only by getting Red Bull. And if I may quote the quest.redbull.com, epic new quest. This epic new quest is a never-before-seen multi-stage mission in the Taken King that will test the speed and strategic abilities of Destiny players in new ways. Only accessible by buying a can of Red Bull.
Oh
and
my
they
God.
also give you not only that, they give you bonus experience.
Didn't Call of Duty do this with like Mountain Dew double XP or something back in the day?
The fact that Mountain Dew exists, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have problems with this not only because it's putting content behind like a weird product placement paywall, but also just because it's like propagating that whole like gamer stereotype of Doritos and Mountain Dew in your mom's basement, and it's like I don't even think I've had a Red Bull like once in my life. Like, this is just really annoying. I mean, it takes like any amount of respect that I had for Destiny post that E3 Taken King trailer and just puts it back into the realm of something that I hate.
Oh, well, that Taken King trailer was great, but there's other information about the Taken King that really bothers me, actually. There's a version of the game that comes with all of the original content plus all of the expansions up till 9, along with the Taken King expansion, bundled all together for $80, which that seems like, a good deal for someone who doesn't have the game already, right? But the thing is that also comes with some special exclusive items that you can only get by buying that. So what do, say, fans who have been getting all the content as it's released day one nonstop, they can't get that exclusive content unless they spend another $80 and rebuy the content they had already purchased. So that, along with this Red Bull promotion, which I guess if you do drink Red Bull, it's great because you're getting free content that should have been there to begin with. But for the rest of us, I think it's kind of a pretty messed up thing they're doing, and I'm not actually sure I will be getting the Taken King right when it comes out, like I have with the previous expansions.
Yeah, that just sounds. I can't even articulate how mad stuff like that makes me. I mean, it's like one of those. If Destiny were a free-to-play game and it had like all this weird microtransaction-y stuff and product placement, I would be like fine with it. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, you can still like play the core experience for free. But like people, like you said, there are people who have spent money on Destiny, who have been loyal fans to Bungie and like bought stuff on day one, and then all of a sudden they're getting screwed and like they can't get access to certain types of content.
Well, I mean, I guess unless you buy a Red Bull, I mean, it does give you wings. So
That's true. You know what? If it actually gives you wings in the game and you can fly, it might be worth it. You can just pour the Red Bull in the sink and use whatever. I assume there's like a code on the can or something.
Yeah, there are codes on the can, and that you can use to get new quests or to get the bonus experience. So.
Oh man! All right, well, let's move on from news then and talk a little bit about non-gaming in the section we have hobbies. So I have 3 things. I don't know if you have anything this week or not that you've been doing. I know you've been doing a lot of traveling, but I have 3 things that I just want to touch on super, super fast. I know we're running a little long today. But the first of those being a novel called Tarkin. And if Tarkin sounds familiar to you and you're a Star Wars fan, that's probably because you're thinking of Grand Moff Tarkin, and rightfully so. So this is the first novel chronologically in the new series of adult novels in the new Star Wars canon. So remember all that like really awesome Timothy Zahn, like Admiral Thrawn trilogy and all that really cool stuff, Shadows of the Empire, the stuff that we loved back in the day in the expanded Star Wars universe and all the novels. All got scrapped, right, when Disney bought Lucasfilm. And so now Tarkin is the first official thing in the new canon novels, and there are a couple others. And I've been using my monthly Audible credits to take advantage of this new Star Wars canon starting and getting each new audiobook each month. So I started at the beginning with Tarkin, and already got a couple other ones downloaded I hope to listen to soon. I was a little mad about like the canon starting over, but at the end of the day, like, you know that they're going to get really good authors, really good science fiction authors to write these Star Wars books, and Tarkin's no exception to that rule. A great book. It starts off between episodes 3 and 4. So Moff Tarkin, not yet a Grand Moff, but just Moff Tarkin, has been assigned to build a space station in the Outer Rim that has the capability of destroying planets. Sound familiar?
Indeed, it does.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert, it's the Death Star.
So, I thought you were talking about a mere TIE fighter.
so he's out there, building the Death Star when this strange hologram technology, like hijacking, that we saw used in the prequel movies by Count Dooku and in the Clone Wars cartoon series by Count Dooku. Someone starts using that technology to try to trick the what has just become the Empire, right? And Senator Palpatine has just ascended to Emperor, right? We're pretty close on the tail end of Episode 3 here. And so Tarkin is investigating some attacks and some hologram hijackings by some folks using this older technology once made a little famous by Count Dooku. So Tarkin is summoned to Coruscant to meet with the Emperor and gets this assignment to investigate this situation alongside none other than Darth Vader. And so what we have is essentially a Sherlock and Watson, mystery story. And that's what this is. This is like a detective story starring Grand Moff Tarkin and Darth Vader, which is actually pretty cool. It's a pretty cool idea. So we get to see like kind of how the friendship develops a little bit and like the mutual respect between Tarkin and Vader. The audiobook is amazing. It has fully produced sound effects, lasers, Star Wars music. There's a guy who's not James Earl Jones, but he's pretty damn good doing Darth Vader. And everything is just like voiced and produced so amazingly. I was drawn into it. It was like I was listening to a Star Wars movie. And so Tarkin and Vader across the universe solving mysteries together, Scooby-Doo style. And it's a great book. And you learn a lot about Tarkin's background as a character, and there's a lot of building there. There's some references to some of the newish canon stuff, like Ahsoka Tano from the Clone Wars cartoon. She's mentioned a couple times in there. So there's a little bit of fan service in there as well. Fun book. Definitely recommend everybody go listen to it, and absolutely get these books. I will never I will never read another Star Wars novel because the audiobook with all the sound effects and everything, amazing. So good. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, Orange is the New Black. You watch that? Are you a fan of this show on Netflix?
No, I haven't started watching it yet. I tend to be a late comer to watching television or Netflix shows. I tend to wait until after like just about every season is out. I didn't watch The Office, for example, until the end of the 9th season, and I'm just now getting into Parks and Rec. So
nice. Yeah. So Orange is the New Black is more. There are some parts that might qualify as drama, but I think it's more comedy show than anything. And really, I think that on Orange is the New Black, the premise of the show, I mean, if you're not familiar with, is basically this woman commits some white collar crime and she gets sent to prison, and it's the interactions that she has in prison, right, with all these other characters and kind of the shenanigans that go on. So there's a lot of comedy to it. It's obviously also a very graphic and real show at times, both from a sexual standpoint and from a violence standpoint. But it does what Lost did really well, and that's character development. And so you get these flashbacks and you learn about what these characters were like before they were put in prison. And it's not always just as simple as like, oh, they're a murderer. There's always some like unique flavor to the backstory of each of these characters. So while this isn't one of my favorite shows and not even my favorite Netflix series, original series, I really appreciate what they do in terms of character development, because I love when shows do that part really well. Season 3 just came out a couple of weeks ago, just finished that up, and it ends on some pretty good, like, cliffhanger-y notes. Also has some fun. I think one of the scenes that they used in the last episode of this season actually would have been a much better final scene than what was the actual final scene. It would have ended it on more of one of those like, oh man, like cliffhangers. But overall, season 3, Orange is the New Black, it was entertaining, certainly. I mean, it's one of those shows that I can watch very passively because the story isn't one where I have to see every little detail. But then someone on screen will do something or say something that just makes me like laugh or makes me like suddenly perk up and pay attention a little bit. Not to mention a couple of the inmates are pretty hot. So it's a fun show, but it does very well with the character development, weaving these little dramatic pieces in between the comedy, kind of a dark comedy. So season 3, Orange is the New Black, I would say worth a watch. And then the final thing this week that I took a look at was a movie called Silver Linings Playbook. Have you seen that movie or heard of it before?
I've heard of it. I have not actually yet seen it.
So this is a film that won several awards a couple of years back, starring Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. And I'll watch anything with Katniss in it. But I got to give this movie kind of a thumbs down. It started out really with Bradley Cooper getting out of a mental institution and really coping with some very serious mental issues. And I thought this was going to be a film that explored mental illness and treated that subject very seriously and kind of showed us what that struggle was like, and did that in an interesting way. And Robert De Niro is also in the film. So there's some very interesting characters, good actors. But at the end of the day, this show or this movie felt a little unrealistic to me. Everything just kind of fell into place exactly where you thought it would for the ending, a little too easily, a little too cleanly. And I felt like it turned into more of like a weird, almost like those, oh man, I don't know, like it was almost like a rom-com or like a romance film with a little bit of flavor of one of those films like Fatal Attraction or something. So it just took a weird turn, like kind of halfway through it, and went in a direction that didn't really make sense for it to go. And at the end of it, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and like, I don't really know what the point was. So I can't say that Silver Linings Playbook was necessarily a great film. So you have any parting advice for us, or anything you've been doing in terms of non-gaming hobbies you want to share?
Yeah, actually, I recently, aside from my travels to Pennsylvania, I went kayaking in New York City, which I'm not originally from here, so I didn't know that there was a place around outside of the ocean that you could, because I thought it was just all buildings. But I went to Flushing Meadows Corona Park, which for me was really cool, not because I can kayak in this huge lake that's there, but actually because I like the movie Men in Black, and those spaceship things on the on the pillars and that giant globe, they're there. And so
Oh, I did not know those were a real thing.
they are a real thing. It's a real place. And I went there like the other week, and it was awesome, and it's probably, normal or boring for people from here originally, but I went there, and that globe is huge, and it's all made of metal, and there are these fountains all around it, and I just kind of want to climb up it, actually. But the one thing that was a little bit disappointing was that the things, when you're actually really close, those tower things don't look as much like spaceships as they do in Men in Black, which was kind of saddening. But it was funny because I was there with my wife, and she was getting a little annoyed at me because every few minutes I'd pretend to flash her memory or something.
I think I would probably be doing the exact same thing. Did you get any pictures with these monuments?
No, I didn't bring a camera, but I will be going back again.
Dude, you and your brother are absolute failures at capturing these. First, he fails to capture moments with stormtroopers, and then you have a Men in Black moment and don't get any pictures.
Well, here's the deal. I will go back, I will wear a suit, and I will take pictures there, okay? I can do that for you. And because I have to go back anyway, because I have some kind of science museum tickets that were pre-bought for me that I don't want to waste, and that's also there. So, yeah, I'm going to go there. I'll do that. And, yeah, if you ever come up this way, we can just walk around and act like Men in Black.
Nice. All right. Well, that might make up for it. All right. Well, I think at this point it's time to wrap the show up. I want to thank everybody who's listened this week, and continue to encourage everyone to watch the Google Hangouts live and participate in the Q&A. We always have the Q&A panel open, so you can submit questions, and we'll be sure to reply to those on the show as we get time. And you can also give us feedback, questions, and comments that we'll read on the show at worldmapcast@gmail.com. Again, we do the live Google Hangout on air where you can participate and watch the video live about 3 p.m. Eastern every Sunday. You can also find us on YouTube where you can subscribe, like, and comment on the show episodes. And obviously we're on as an audio podcast, fully edited and produced as well, with bumpers and everything, and some by the way, some great Final Fantasy VII tunes in last week's episode. If anyone hasn't listened to that one yet, I actually listened to the episode again just to hear some of the music that I had sampled in it. Less than just a few seconds, of course, so we don't get sued. But great Final Fantasy VII music there. So listen to us on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe in your podcast app. Please, please, please take just like 3 seconds. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Helps us out. For those of you who don't like iTunes, or you're not on an iOS platform, you can also listen to us on Stitcher. We're on there as well. You can give us reviews there as well. And most importantly, just tell a friend about the show. You can also find us online at worldmapcast.com. We're on Twitter as @worldmapcast. And you can give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/worldmapcast. And you can find me playing games online on PS4. I am Thunder_Hokey. On GOG and Steam, I'm just Thunderhokey, all one word. And on Battle.net, I am James Sorius. Clark, where can the listeners find you online?
Well, they can find me on the PS4, or actually the Vita and any PS platform, really, at _Clunkster, and on Nintendo Network, Battle.net, and Steam as Clunkster. And well, let's face it, you're probably not going to find me on the Nintendo Network because I'm not going to give you my friend code. That just takes too much time. But you might be able to see the little drawings I make on Miiverse.
and soon your screenshot of that Super Smash Bros. Wii U 100% completion, right?
Yeah, it's going to happen, because if it doesn't, then you guys can pick on me and, call me names.
Nice. All right, well, thanks again to everybody for listening, and until next time, we are Poppin' Smoke.